We use it like in a very weird way in some places. We have to come up with our like, I wouldn't call them hacks, but they are like clever uses of the API.
Is there anything else, like any other big vision for the future of Reanimated?
Reanimated 4 is the future. So
okay.
We also appreciate that CSS animations are easy to predict. You know what will happen. And this way we will be able to add some optimizations. They don't teach that in school. You have to explain it to the community, and then they do really good.
Nobody has to read docs. Almost everyone knows how keyframe animations work. They are simple, they are very intuitive, and I think that everyone will admire that animations can now be as simple as an CSS on web.
Basically, we just expected some errors, and they happened. We fixed them, and it's all good. There are no hacks. No. Just even not workarounds. They are just clever usages of API, and we have to make sure it works everywhere. Whatever happens, please remember, we love you, we love the community, and we'll do nothing bad for you.
React Universe on Air, your go-to podcast for all things cross-platform.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ola Desmusniczewska. I'm here to talk about Reanimated 4 with two great guests, Tomasz Zawadzki and Mateusz Łopaciński from Software Mention. Guys, would you please introduce yourself, Tomek?
Sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Tomasz Zawadzki. I'm a React Native open source developer here at Software Mention. I've worked here for more than 4 years now, and I've been the part of the Reanimated team for more than 3 years right now. And today, together with me, we have Mateusz.
Yeah, and I've been working at the Software Mention a little bit shorter, less than 3 years, and mostly for client projects. I joined open source team recently, a few months ago, and after joining, I started working on new Reanimated and new features. So I'm quite new, and yeah, that's it, I think.
Before recording this podcast, we met and you guys shared a great story of how Mateusz joined the team. Would you like to, could you tell that story again?
Sure. So in our kitchen, we met with Mateusz, and he told me that his engineering thesis, in his engineering thesis, he uses Reanimated. And actually he reported several issues. And then then I thought to myself that maybe it would be really cool to have Mateusz on our team. And so here we have Mateusz.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be able to be a part of this team. I learned a lot a few recent months after joining, and I'm very happy that I can be a part and create such a fancy, very useful library like Reanimated. It was a great opportunity.
Yeah, when you're starting out, when you're first filing issues and you're like saying this doesn't work, and then you go on the other side of the barricade, right? And now you get to fix all the stuff that you reported.
I didn't only report issues, I also fixed a bit of them. So that's not only that I was complaining about everything, I was also trying to help somehow.
Yeah, that's true. I have to confirm.
Okay, that's good. Always helping. That's great. And I would like to mention that I love that you have the title of React Native Open Source Developer on your bios on Twitter and Blue Sky. It's really great that we have you in the community, that you develop these tools and these libraries. So let's maybe start with a little bit of history. Let's talk a little bit how Reanimated came about. Just real quick, I'm sure a lot of our listeners already know, but maybe there's like some insider knowledge or something. So Tomek, since you've been at Software Mention for a while now, maybe you can tell us the story.
So Reanimated was designed to be a drop-in replacement for the animated API, which is built into React Native. And the first version of Reanimated...
And as we all know, works very great, right? So we all love it.
Sometimes it does, yeah. Okay. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So Reanimated was there to solve its problems. That's why it's named Reanimated. You actually redo something. So the first version was a drop-in replacement, and it was really difficult to build animations back then because you had to build a graph of nodes, and the code would be just like 200 lines of code for a simple interaction with gestures. So that's why in Reanimated 2, we introduced worklets, and worklets are functions, like short functions, that can be executed on the UI thread, which is actually the main part of doing animations, because if you want them to be smooth, if you want them to be really, really nice for the users, they have to be performed on the UI thread. So this is the main thread of your application. And this was like a paradigm shift, because instead of building the graph, you would just express the same expressions in pure JavaScript, the language that we all know and love. And actually, Reanimated 2 was the de facto standard. It became a de facto standard for building animations in React Native. It got like pretty huge community adoption, and the community really likes it. But then, in late 2021 or early 2022, if I remember correctly, this whole thing called new architecture started to appear in the community. And so we had to add support for new architecture. So then we released Reanimated 3, which was basically the same as Reanimated 2. So the APIs were the same. We actually dropped the V1 version, so Reanimated 1 APIs, and we added support for new architecture. So Reanimated 3 was compatible with both architectures, both the old one and the new one. And it works pretty well. And then we thought maybe it's time for Reanimated 4. And the thing that we wanted to add were CSS animations and CSS transitions.
So yeah, these are the big like additions to the library. Mateusz, as far as I know, you've been like spearheading that effort on adding that. So do you want to like give us a high level overview of what is added?
Yeah, but I would like to start with my background with Reanimated, because I joined Reanimated team when there was a third version actively maintained, and previous weren't longer supported and maintained. So I have no background with previous ones, but I can share my experience when I started working with Reanimated 3. And I can remember I was struggling to create even a simple animation. I had to
What was the struggle? Like, what was the difficulty for you?
Difficulty was that it has really steep learning curve for a beginner. It requires reading a lot of docs, searching for functions to use, hooks, and the API at first glance isn't that simple and that easy. And maybe that's because of my background. I was used to writing websites. I previously worked on React projects for a client, and remember that I was able to create simple animations with keyframes. But Reanimated didn't allow me to do it since I started working on it. But finally, we are going to release CSS animations. There is currently a beta, but in a few months, there will be a replacement for old API. Maybe not actually replacement, but a new feature that can be used together with old API. And new API is better for one most important reason. Nobody have to read docs. Almost everyone knows how keyframe animations work. They are simple, they are very intuitive, and I think that everyone will admire that animations can now be as simple as an CSS on web. So I think that this is the main reason that we've thought of releasing a new version with new features.
Yeah, that's true, that the simplicity of CSS animations is really comforting and really nice to use. Like I looked at the repo that you have, because you have like a separate repo with examples, right? And you have a couple of examples, and in one of them I just like took a quick look and I saw like the percentages, like the keyframes, and I thought, yes, okay, cool. Now I really I look at the code and I know what's gonna happen in the animation. So that feels really good.
Yeah, but this is only one of the factors, simplicity. The other factor is definitely the whole effort of web alignment. This is what happens in the community, in the React Native community right now. Meta actively adds new features from CSS. They are working on the alignment of React Native with React when it comes to styling. So this is our response to those efforts. And since you've mentioned the simplicity and how easy it is to tell what will happen next, we also appreciate that CSS animations are easy to predict. So you know what will happen, and this way we will be able to add some optimizations because of that purpose. Because in worklets, they had to be executed. They had to be executed like on each animation frame, and there was really no room for such optimizations. And with CSS animations and CSS transitions, we can just optimize them and predict what will happen.
Yeah, definitely. That is a big thing. So do you think a move by Meta towards like aligning with React, what do you think is the goal for them to align with React?
I think that it's for simplicity for developers who move from web development to React or from React to React Native. They want to make this change as seamless as possible. And almost everyone at the beginning starts from learning basics like JavaScript, CSS. And learning another library, another API was always a real problem. Nobody likes it. So this movement is somehow made for simplicity to give more user-friendly API to developers that everyone would know without learning new things.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just use some trusted standards. We don't have to come up with our own test examples. We can just reuse some test suites that we see on web, and we can just make it simpler for everyone to learn. Because if you already know React, if you know HTML, CSS, then you can just write your mobile apps in React Native with what you already know.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I feel that that's a very great path to take, and making that learning curve for people coming from web is really opening the doors for a lot of people to join React Native space. If you're a web developer out there and you're tempted to try things like Ionic, like please don't. It sucks. There are so many Reddit threads on this topic. I don't want to go on a whole rant. Let's go back to Reanimated 4 because CSS transitions, there's changes there also.
Yeah, CSS transitions are a separate feature from animations. CSS animations can be thought that they are a replacement for all the old API that we used hooks and animated styles, but CSS transitions are a new feature that are fired when the user changes styles of components, and they can provide smooth animations between different layouts, different styles, without user having to calculate all the values between or thinking when to fire it. It just runs when the user provides a new style to the view. So it's as simple as possible and very predictable. You can just see what happens at which point, just reading a code and seeing that the specific style is applied after some condition is met, instead of just having some shared values and wondering when does it update and how to trigger the update.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I realized I said like shared transitions. Shared transitions is a different feature that exists in Reanimated, right? There are shared transitions, but it's a different thing than CSS transitions.
Yeah, this is a different thing. There are many things named transitions right now. You have layout transitions, CSS transitions, and shared element transitions, but they are different things. CSS transitions are a new feature, and it's not even similar to what we had.
Okay, you mentioned that Reanimated 3 added support for new architecture, and now there's a big change in the fact that Reanimated 4 will support only new architecture. What motivated that decision?
So it was a definitely hard decision, because in Reanimated 3, when we added support for the new architecture, we tried to stay compatible with both architectures at once. And this has some costs to it, some maintenance costs. This was for the transition period. We knew that the adoption of the new architecture would last for a few months at least, or a few years. So we really wanted to cover, to secure the users with something that's working on both options. But when you think how many configurations there are to test for us when we release a new version, just to name a few, so we support we try to support 3 latest React Native versions, so that's already 3 times 2 because we have 2 platforms, we have Android and iOS, and even more, times 2 build types. We have debug builds, we have release builds, and then we have 2 architectures, Paper and Fabric, the legacy architecture and the new architecture. It's just too much for us to test. We had to have separate implementations for each platform in some places, separate implementations for for debug and release sometimes, and definitely separate implementations for the old architecture and the new architecture. And our code is in several places is just, if new architecture, then do something else, do something else. And this is not a great code base to maintain for us. So we had to make a decision. And actually, we made the decision quite late, I would say still, because I think that Reanimated was one of the first or one of the first libraries to make this decision, but the decision was by that the old architecture will be phased out soon. It's going to be completely removed, and only the new architecture will be possible to use. In fact, in React Native 76, the new architecture became the default, and in some future release of React Native, the old architecture will be just removed. So we just follow the general direction of the ecosystem. Other libraries do the same. And actually, some of the new features in React Native itself, in React Native Core, are supported only on the new architecture. For instance, CSS box shadow, or filter, or display contents made by Łopaciński from Software Mention, or percent values in props like in styles like gap or transform. So we just follow the general direction of the ecosystem, and this is something that has to happen at some point.
Makes sense. Have you seen those like panicking tweets and posts that the performance is worse on the new architecture? What do you think about those?
I don't think that performance is worse. I think that people expected it to be much better, and somehow new architecture was, I think, that advertised to people in a way that they expected a major change in performance, that everything will be a few times faster. I would say that at that point it's very similar in many places, and we cannot say that performance is worse, actually. I haven't noticed any performance problems in the new architecture, so maybe people just expected too much.
People love to see some numbers, like the new architecture just got 500% faster. People really love to see such numbers, but the truth is that the new architecture was created for a reason, and that reason was actually better performance for those who write the code, because if you have to maintain several languages at once, the code in several languages at once, then it's definitely slower to maintain. And as for the performance of the new architecture, it's a bit faster, I would say, but the main part is that it's more predictable. So if you have your code written in C++, then it behaves like similarly on both Android and iOS. But on the old architecture, there some of the parts of React Native were just written in like two different ways, and one of them was fast and the other was slow. And with everything in C++, you just get more predictable behavior. And as for the optimizations, if you optimize once, then you can benefit everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. So we're talking about new architecture. We have to mention migration. If somebody has their app with Reanimated 3, what is it going to take for them to move to Reanimated 4?
So we plan to, at the very beginning, support Reanimated in its shape and release it as a Reanimated 4 package that can be just replaced, just replace the third version. We don't plan to drop any APIs or features that are relevant to users, and the change should be very seamless, that people only upgrade Reanimated and cannot see any differences. Maybe Tomasz would say more about other things that we plan to do, but the change should be seamless for users, and I hope that nobody would have problems.
Yeah, you're pretty much like adding stuff. You're not planning to remove stuff, pretty much.
At least for now. At least for now. Because, we know that Reanimated is pretty heavily used by the community. We did some math like 1 year ago, and we calculated that Reanimated is used in like 70 or even 80% of production apps.
I think pretty much every project I've been on, when we start and there's like, we're talking with the client and they say we want an app with animations, like the first question is, can we use Reanimated? And if the answer is no, everybody's like, oh, sad. So yeah, definitely a lot of apps use it.
Exactly. So we know that users love Reanimated. We know that they use Reanimated. We know that they rely on Reanimated in some ways. So we can just take it from them and say, hey, just rewrite all of your animations and spend 2 months on it. No, we definitely won't do that. But at the same time, we have to add new features and we have to fix some of the bugs. So we need to go forward. We need to push forward, and this is a hard decision. So for now, we decided that Reanimated 4 will be basically it will be easy to upgrade from Reanimated 3 to Reanimated 4. But keep in mind that Reanimated 4 is not in its final form yet. So we just released beta 0.2, and it should work the same as Reanimated 3, some latest release of Reanimated 3. But it's not in the final form. As for the migration steps, we will add a guide to our documentation. We have lovely docs made by Kasper Kapuściak and Patrycja Kalińska from Software Mention, so you can expect that there will be some section with exact steps that you need to take. We take the migration really seriously. We know that that our library users will search for it, so we'll just provide the information. And we'll try to make the upgrade as smooth as possible. So in Reanimated 4, we will not remove the APIs from Reanimated 3. So for instance, the worklets, for instance, some gesture-based animations, scroll-based animations, they are here to stay. But you can expect that in the future, we will try to split Reanimated into some sub-packages. Because there's so many... Yeah, there's so many features in one library that we have to split it into several sub-packages. For instance, there's a thing called User-Animated Sensor that lets you write animations, that lets you build animations based on the position and rotation of your device. Maybe you use it, but maybe you don't. And if you don't use it, why should you have its code bundled in your app? So this will be moved to separate packages. Also, keyboard-based animations, some layout animations. We don't have a clear idea right now, but we are working on it.
And do you think you're hoping to land that in the Reanimated 4 when it's like the modularity? Do you want it to be in Reanimated 4 or in some future release?
We'll see. I would say that in some future release. It hasn't been decided yet, and we're working on it. I would love to see Reanimated 4 being completely compatible with Reanimated 3, but we'll see.
Okay.
But whatever happens, please remember, we love you, we love the community, and we'll do nothing bad for you.
You're listening to React Universe on Air, your go-to podcast for all things cross-platform with React and React Native.
Okay, so we were talking about modularity and what changes are to be present in the future, maybe what you see in the future for Reanimated. But this version, Reanimated 4, solves already some issues, and there are some use cases that you probably think about for what you've added. So do you have some use cases in mind that you would like to talk about?
I can tell you something about CSS animations and their use cases. Because they're meant to replace old API where possible. Everywhere where we're creating animations that don't depend on any actions like gestures or something like that. Because the old API still will be valid, and for cases when we need more control over what is happening in each keyframe and animation is calculated based on some other event, we would have to use the old API. But there are many cases when users just need some simple interaction. Let's say after pressing on a button, we want to display something like a shadow or something else that it looks very nice. So we can use CSS transitions or animations for that case. And this will be very easy to add such simple things. Also, more complex animations that don't depend on other events can be easily written. I mean that representing states with keyframes and different offsets for complex animation can be more easy for developer to think about. I remember myself just writing for fun, one example, when I was animating a ball that jumps and bounces off the ground. And I was using 3 different transformations, like translate Y, scale X, and scale Y. And doing it with keyframes is much easier because I think only about states, what is happening, like the ball near the ground have to be squashed a bit. When it runs, bounces off and it's flying up, it changes its appearance a bit. So I only think about states that it should reach at certain place instead of calculating it myself. I then, as an experiment, rewrote it using old API, and it was horrible. I was just writing it more than half an hour compared to the first animation that I wrote in a few minutes. And I was wondering how to translate everything to the old API, how to calculate each value. So for that use cases, I think that this will be great for developers to have something much easier and more readable.
Yeah, and like easier to sort of wrap your head around how to actually achieve the end goal that you want to see. You spoke about the ball. Do you have like your favorite animation that you like really loved creating?
It's very hard to say. I didn't do any tier list, let's say, of animations.
Okay.
But I was always very into writing some fancy stuff like animations, transitions. And I remember my beginnings when I was learning web development for myself and playing around with CSS a lot. I always used to watch some videos on YouTube and learning new things, but I cannot like pick one animation which is the best for me. There are different animations for different use cases, so it's hard to just say which one is the best. It depends on the use case that I have to somehow implement.
There are also some common animations that would happen like really frequently in mobile apps. Things like loaders, spinners, some skeletons. And if you have such a use case, then you even don't need to come up with your own CSS animation. You can just use a library called React Native CSS animations made by Kacper, which just provides a set of built-in basic animations for you to use, available both as styles and as components. So it's really easy to use and well documented.
So you would recommend if somebody just needs like very simple, just a couple of loaders, go with the simple like CSS library. And then if you need to control maybe something related to the gestures and stuff like that, then Reanimated will be a better path to take.
Yeah, definitely. For instance, gesture-based animations or scroll-based animations, this is something that you still need the worklets for. So the version 3 API.
Well, you have an ad. You have a very, very cute ad for Reanimated 4, and it includes animations. And I'm curious, just like, how it was made. Did you actually create the animations for the app, or is it just images?
There are animations that run in the app.
Okay.
I can say that I mostly got some inspiration watching different animations on CodePen that are available on web and everyone can look at. Some of them were like copied, but because I had no idea how to write something like that. But the process of moving this animation from web to React Native now was very easy. I could just use ChatGPT to copy code of animation, try to change syntax a little bit to JavaScript object from keyframes from CSS-style sheet, and it was ready to use. So most of the animations were written in this way, very easily, and looking the same way as on web.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you a little bit more about how Reanimated is developed. So when we write native code for Reanimated, when we write animations, we have an example app. This is called like paper example or fabric example. Right now, paper example is dead, but fabric example, this is what we currently use. And it's just a very, very basic animations with a few screens, with things like, I don't know, rotating rectangles or some color transitions. It's not a real app. It's a React Native app, but with some fake views. And this is what we do. This is what React Native open source developers at Software Merchant do. We just spend 8 hours a day looking at rotating rectangles. And Mateusz, he has a very good. Yeah, Mateusz has a very good background because he's worked in several apps for our clients. So he said, no, we can't do that. We need to come up with like real world examples, and he created another CSS animations example app. And when we saw the example app, we said, we have to show this to the world. So that's why we recorded the trailer that you saw, the Reanimated 4 trailer. And it's just
Nice.
a showcase of some of the examples from Mateusz's app.
Okay. Nice. Good job, Mateusz. Is the
thanks.
example is the example app a part of the maybe release or merging? Do you when somebody works on whatever feature they're working on, does it have to pass through the example app?
Yeah, we are doing manual testing and watching if anything broken after recent changes to confirm that everything is fine. This app is part of our monorepo that we have our library and some example apps. So every developer that adds new feature or changes something or just want to debug something uses this app and watches if everything works fine and as expected.
I was recently asked by another developer what I think about monorepos. I'm curious, how do you like working in a monorepo?
It was hard to get used to at first, but I had experience from my previous project from a client who also used monorepo, even more complex than this one, with more sub-apps, private packages that they developed, and some other things. So I got used to this structure, and I can say that I like it because you have everything in one place. You don't have to just bother about versioning of different packages, installing them separately. And if you want to fix one bug, you can do it right away in this package, test it right away without building new package. You have everything in one place, so it's much faster for developers to create new features, to debug things, to work with this kind of code.
So this is the perspective of other developer. There's also another perspective from library developers that we have.
Okay.
And for library developers, especially for native libraries in React Native, monorepos are a bit more difficult to handle. That's because React Native has some assumptions about where things are located. So, for instance, that, some build Gradle is 2 directories up. And if you have a monorepo and if you have a library that needs to work in a monorepo, then you have to add some more logic to correctly handle paths. So from our side, it was a bit of pain. But right now, all of our libraries at Software Machine that we maintain, they should work fine in monorepos. They should work fine with different package managers, including Yarn, NPM, PNPM, and Bun even.
And even Bun, wow. You're cool. Okay. So, you being a library developer, were there any roadblocks, unexpected things that you stumbled upon while developing, adding features to Reanimated, to create Reanimated 4?
It's hard to say there are any unexpected things. I think that we had a good plan how it should look like, and the main problem was to design the architecture behind it, design how it works. But there are other problems with implementation that normally happen and everyone have to somehow handle. I don't think that we had something else that was preventing us from adding new features or new other things.
Basically, we just expected some errors and they happened. We fixed them and it's all good. We knew it wasn't an easy path. We knew that in several places we can make some mistakes. Also memory management, also integrating with the new rendering pipeline from React Native. We use it in a very weird way in some places. We have to come up with our, I wouldn't call them hacks, but they are clever uses of the API, and we need to make sure they are stable.
I like that. I mean, I wouldn't call them hacks, but clever usages.
They're
of the API. Okay,
they're
cool.
no hacks.
I like that.
No. Just even not workarounds. They are just clever usages of API. And we have to make sure it works everywhere. Even if it works for us in our example app with rotating rectangles and squares, we need to make sure it works in some apps that we maintain, some apps that we build at Software Machine for our clients. So we make sure that it works in such apps, and then we are ready to release it to the public, but not as a stable release. We release it as beta version. We'll definitely release few more beta versions, and once we are sure that it's ready for a public rollout, then we'll release a stable version of Reanimated 4.
So if our listeners are very eager to start with Reanimated 4, would you recommend it? What path would you recommend for them to take if they're very excited to try CSS animations in React Native?
What path? For now, there is a bit beta release, so everyone can install it. in a clean project, for example, or in already working app because it works with all the features that people are already using. And we can try to write some animations that they have in the other way, using the new API to see how easier it is. I think that the most profit would be if people would try to recreate things that they already have using new API and see how everything looks cleaner. But I think there is no just one way that people should use it. Everyone can come up with different ways to adapt to new API. And I think the key is to try it and see if people like it, if people can work with the new API. But there's no clear path to follow. Everyone may have different ideas how to start.
You can also perform an experiment. You can find some really cool CSS animation or transition online, written for web, for React or just for web. And you can translate the code into CSS animation code that Reanimated understands. Because on web you write in CSS, there's full CSS syntax. But if you write apps in React Native, you have to write your styles in JavaScript. So you have to convert all of the, some of the characters to braces or the case of the identifiers. You have to exactly. You have to convert it manually. And this is a bit of pain.
Also.
Yeah, you can use ChatGPT, but ChatGPT still it can make some mistakes. It doesn't really know the API, which is not public yet. It's not common knowledge yet for LLMs. So that's why we also decided to prepare a tool that lets you convert CSS code to JavaScript code. It's called React Native CSS Translator. You can just copy and paste the CSS code on the left side, and the counterpart on the right side will be, you can copy the counterpart of the right side and copy it directly to your React Native app, and it should work.
Nice. Is that an open source tool? Is it available?
So you can find it online. I can provide you a link, and it's just a private repo for now, but I can just toggle a switch and make it public. No worries with that.
It sounds super useful, I think. Maybe to our listeners, we can make sort of a contest in the comments. Come on, people, drop your links to experiments. Go ahead and look for animations on CodePen, like Mateusz mentioned. You can look for web animations and then try to rewrite them in a Slack app. You can then drop links to Slack apps where you add Reanimated 4 and try to rewrite the animation, and we'll try to figure out which one is the most interesting one, right? And let's have some fun with it. Were you surprised by the community adoption, how people were adopting the library in so many apps? Did that surprise you? Or were you like, I know this is great, people would just use it?
No. It is still a bit surprising that we write code that lands on multiple devices across the world. I mean, if you come up with some clever idea in React Native, then you can prepare a library. You can write some native modules or turbo modules or nitro modules, etc. You can just release to the public, and it will gain some attraction. You will just get some. You'll get some 500 stars, 600 stars. But it's really difficult to pass through some thresholds. And there are some libraries that have more than 10k stars, and we know that they are really, really popular. So this is very surprising. The other surprising thing is how many things can go wrong. For instance, we had some. This was back in 2022 or even earlier. We had some really really weird bugs, and some of those bugs were caused by improper caching. Turns out that Metro, it has some cache, and if you change the configuration in your Babel config.js, then you have to pass an additional argument yarn start reset cache. And for several months, we couldn't find this problem. And then it was a really good solution. And from the time, since then, we really started to care about user experience and actionable error messages. So what we do right now is we try to detect that you have invalid cache, incorrect cache. And then we show a warning. Here's what you need to do. And this is the best kind of user experience that you can provide for your users. some of the users, like, they really wanted to check out some of the new PRs. For some time, we just couldn't release it like so frequently. We try to release it like each month or each 2 months. Some of the users were expecting us to release more frequently, so we configured nightly releases. So you can try our recent changes like each day after each day. So we have nightly builds, we have RC versions sometimes. Right now we have beta versions. So sometimes you need to be like 1 or even 2 steps forward to predict what can happen and how the community will use your code.
Right, because you cannot always it's difficult to predict how people are going to use it.
Exactly. It's really good to consult the new APIs with at least your team or some other users of your library before you actually publish it.
When you're writing features and fixing bugs, maybe there's one thing that you're really proud of that you managed to fix. Like there's something that you can say, I'm happy I did that.
Yeah, from the developer perspective, I'm always happy after fixing bugs that I can see many people are struggling with. It's always cheering up and seeing positive feedback if we can release a new version that doesn't include that bug.
I think I have one specific case. So it's an old example, but some time ago, 120 FPS wasn't a standard. It was 60 FPS. And I've made a change that enabled apps to enabled 120 FPS in Reanimated. This was like one line of change, only one line of code, and I got like 20 thumbs up emojis on the PR. So this was like very satisfying for me. So yeah, this was partially an issue because it didn't support 120 FPS, and now it does. There are also some things like under the hood, like memory leaks or some performance issues, and when you fix those, you really get the satisfaction of like you think, good job, like well done.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a nice part of working in open source, that you get like you give a fix to people who need it, and then people see it and they say thanks, right? They give you a thumbs up. That's really good feeling.
Yeah, this is the good part. The bad part is that people sometimes expect any updates on this, like they write really like weird comments on GitHub, but in most of the cases they just don't know that they shouldn't do that. And each time we try to explain, hi, this is Tomek from Reanimated team. We are working on something else right now, which has like more priority. We'll return to this issue in like 2 weeks or 1 week. And we also, if you're a library user, please don't write +1 or same issue. Please just leave a thumbs up reaction in the original issue, in the original bug report. We'll try to fix that. We'll see that some issue has, 50 upvotes. We'll prioritize those. Yeah,
that's a good like community collaboration and informing your users how they can actually help and not be a pain in the butt.
You just have to inform, like they don't teach this in school. They don't teach that in school. You have to explain it to the community, and then they do really good.
It seems like on the internet, like there are communities that have their very own atmosphere, let's say. Like people on Reddit seem to be pretty angry all the time. Like people on Stack Overflow are like, this question has been asked, go away. And people on GitHub seem to be like very nice and always like, okay, like you just mentioned, I'm the maintainer. Please, give me a repro. Do you think it would be easier for you as a maintainer if GitHub were a little bit more, maybe like Stack Overflow, like meaner? Or do you
it's
like
hard
it?
To say. GitHub also provides discussions section where you can ask for different things and get responses. They also can be upvoted. So I think it works in a very similar way to what Stack Overflow provides. But I think that many people don't know about discussions and are used to creating issues, everything. Something that doesn't work, they don't even try to find a solution. They just create an issue without a reproduction example and expect it to be fixed in a few days.
Yeah. And it's out of their hands. It's like, I created an issue, and I want the maintainers to fix it. I'm done. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the problem, that people try to demand demand from us that we provide a solution right away, instead of trying to help us. We should know that this is open source, that people who use library can somehow help us fixing issues. It's not that we don't want to fix bugs. It's sometimes a hard configuration to reproduce, and it will be very easy. It will be much easier for us if everyone understands that and can share code or some repro. Yeah, I think that's it.
Let's make this like an announcement. People, please use discussions. They are there for a reason, and they are like the software mention team reads the discussions, so please use them and
Sometimes
participate.
We do.
Sometimes you do.
I personally do. I prefer reading discussions to issues, because these discussions are often, I think, well described. I mean, in issues, people just are posting a new issue, this doesn't work, giving some recording, and nobody else from community is trying to answer there. But in discussions, always people are trying to help each other. But more people from community can provide a solution or just suggest something that may work. So I personally do like discussions, because more people feel that they can help each other in there instead of watching issues.
And if you'd like to discuss a little bit more, then you can also join our Discord server. We have Software Mention Discord server. There are dedicated channels for each of the library, for Reanimated, for gesture handler, for screens, and there is also a open source channel. You can just ask questions there if you don't want to submit an issue with something or submit open a discussion on GitHub. You can just join our Discord and we'll answer that there.
And we'll make sure to add all the links in the description of this episode. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your vision for modularity for Reanimated. Is there anything else, any other big vision for the future of Reanimated?
I mean, Reanimated 4 is the future. So,
okay.
So it's
we're
already...
in it. Yay.
Yeah, we're in the future. The future is now. What else? Yeah, definitely some modularity. Definitely some better web support and alignment across platforms. Definitely splitting into sub packages. Definitely working on the developer experience. There's so much to do here. Better documentations, more videos, more tutorials. We have so many ideas, but we we have to fix some bugs, and this is our top priority. But we're learning, and we're working on it. There's so much to do.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to have work to do. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I think I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Go ahead, try Reanimated 4, join our Discord, meet us at conferences, come say hello, and be a nice citizen of our open source world on GitHub.
Yes, that's a very good point. You can find us all on our social media. I'm pretty active on Blue Sky and on Twitter, and you guys are active on those platforms as well, as far as I know.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Follow Software Mention on Twitter, on X. Follow our individual profiles.
Follow Tomasz Zav and Matt PL01, or is it Matt 01 PL? Right. I don't remember. Right?
Matty PL01. Quite hard one.
We'll drop all of those links in the description of this episode. Let me do a quick announcement for React Universe Conf, because this is coming this year. This is going to be the second edition of React Universe. We are also looking into the future of not only React Native, but also React, and pulling all the different things in the ecosystem together. The call for papers for React Universe Conf is now open. So we're waiting for your ideas, and just make it big, make it bold, and make it meaningful for the community. You can find more info on the reactuniverseconf.com website. Thank you again for being here. Tomasz Zawadzki, Mateusz Łopaciński. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us. My pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you also. Bye.